Steve, that's better. Yeah. Oh, better with the light on.
There's Scott McGovern, who I haven't seen in so many years.
Hey, hey
Yeah.
Dave.
We're going
Hey,
to be,
Doc.
folks, we'll be a couple
Okay.
minutes just as the people join, so feel free to chat, say hello. It'll be close to 5 after before we get started, just so we can let people jump onto the call.
Wow.
God, good to see your face, buddy. Yep.
Wow, this is just
Okay.
great. It reminds me, there was an old TV show, I'm definitely showing my age here, called This Is Your Life.
I remember that.
You got some old timers who remember that one, you know? They bring somebody out and then all of a sudden they surprise them with all these people, you know, their fifth grade teacher and
Yeah.
first girlfriend and all of these people from all different corners of your life. And that's what I'm seeing here. It's beautiful. Thank you all for being here. It's great. Look forward to conversation.
Just, David, describe that picture behind you.
It is actually a picture that I had nothing to do with. I am in a special apartment for patients of the Sloan Kettering hospital chain here in Manhattan. I'm undergoing a clinical trial, and as part of it, they provided an apartment in the Upper East Side of Manhattan for a month. So that's what I'm in the middle of, and I had nothing to do with the picture, but I'm glad they have some nice artwork in here, and it's sort of
Indeed.
fitting for our environmental awareness and commitment here.
I would have expected a baseball player right next to it, but that's all right.
Well, I have it right in front of me. I have this
Oh, there we
There we
go.
sculpture of a ball player made out of nuts and bolts and things I found at a craft fair, and I thought this was appropriate to have, and it's sitting in front of me, inspiring me today.
Dave, I still love your baseball stories. We may not have a time to cover all the stuff, but
Yeah, let's not go down that rabbit hole.
but I just wanted to let you know that I love your past stories there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for those of you who don't know, while we're still waiting to officially start, I was a bat boy for the New York Mets. It's when I was 12 years old, and some people think that my life and my career has been downhill ever since.
Okay, I'm gonna make the
Well, you're
River
probably the only one
Cross.
here that has their own baseball card.
And I do have my own baseball card. That's true.
I have most of mine, although I gave the good ones to David.
I do still have some of yours, Jim.
Yeah.
Good.
Boy, by the way, if you guys think that I'm an elder of the tribe, let me acknowledge people like Jim Kielsmeyer here, and Arnie Shore, who, and Scott McGovern, Steve Pace. Gosh, there's just a lot of people who served and strove, and as I like to say these days, yielded only when you'd be a damn fool to keep going. So that's my new motto: to serve, to strive, to yield when I'd be a damn fool to keep going. We need to know when it's time to turn back or rest.
Or pause
Or pause. Yes.
and
Yes.
reflect.
Dave,
I
I
need-
take a lot of naps these days, so does that count? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Can you see me,
Who's speaking?
Dory? No.
Dory, I cannot see you, but I can hear you, and I see your name on the screen.
I don't know what to do to get my picture of me.
On the
Usually-
left-hand bottom, there's a place to stop and start your video.
Right.
There's the what? Unaware?
On the bottom, on the left-hand side, there's a place to start and stop your video or mute your audio.
No, mine's all on the top, I think.
Oh,
Yeah, if you find a place that where there's a little video camera with a red line through it, if you click on that, it should bring you up.
Oh, there, now we can see everybody. Okay.
And
And it works that people, it's nice to see people's faces,
Where
but
it
it's,
says start video, is that what you mean?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
there
There
you
you
are.
go.
Now we
Hello.
see.
Beautiful.
Okay. Thank you.
Good
Well
to see you,
done.
Dory. Yep.
Lori was my student at Cornell in the summer times, back in the 90s.
And my grandchildren did stuff with you. And they're all grown up and have their own kids. I was
Age-
gonna have them go this summer, but the program has changed so much that the kids can't stay anywhere. So,
And Dory's on the Cornell Outdoor Education Advisory Board, as is, gosh, a bunch of people here. Ellen Tone, Scott Sklar, Ed Colleton. Not sure if I'm missing anybody, but it's great to see people from Cornell here, as well as Outward Bound.
I have
And
a question for the Cornell people. Is the Cayuga Preventorium or the Cayuga Outdoor Education Center still there?
It is. It is. It's now called the Cayuga Nature Center.
Nature Center.
oh, okay.
They do environmental education. It's
That's where I met you, David.
I believe so. Yeah, it's I believe an independent nonprofit now.
So
Okay.
Steve, what year was that? Do you remember?
75,
Oh my
76,
gosh.
I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, Steve.
I'm gonna cook these meatballs.
I have a favor to ask if you all wouldn't mind muting your microphones now. We're going to go ahead and record this. We will open them up for conversation before we wrap up the day. But for now, if you wouldn't mind doing that, just so we
Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do.
back around.
This one.
There you go, Dory. You got it. Looks like pretty much everybody's muted. And let's roll, Mark.
Thanks. Awesome. Well, good afternoon and welcome everybody to the Fireside Chat with HonX. My name is Mark Brown and I'm a co-founder of HonX. I'm the author of Outward Bound Lessons to Live a Life of Leadership. I'm a former Outward Bound intern, assistant instructor, instructor course director, program manager. Spent around 20 years connected to Outward Bound before moving on to other things in life. And we're really grateful to have all of you here today. We decided to launch this Fireside Chat series to capture some of the stories of people who have been through Outward Bound and mainly the staff and who I think really helped shape what Outward Bound has become in the United States. And eventually, I think we'll branch off to around the world as well. HonX is actually right now supporting Outward Bound Center for Peace Building program, which has been going on in Europe and will be helping create dialogue among those instructors from several countries as they go back to their schools. So we are a small little social enterprise that's just getting started, really to help connect people who have been impacted by the teaching of Kurt Hahn and allow those folks to connect with each other and continue to do good work in the world. So it's my really privilege to welcome David Moriah to the conversation today. And I'll just read the bio that he sent to me. I know most of you probably do know him, but Outward Bound set the course of my life and has lived deep in my soul ever since my 28-day Hurricane Island sailing course in 1972. That was HI 44. I was a field instructor at NCOBS, program director at VOBS, and I served in various capacities at the New York City and Philadelphia Outward Bound urban centers and with Outward Bound Professional. Along the way, I started Cornell University Outdoor Education Program, and I helped raise two great kids. Today, I'm living abundantly with stage 4 cancer diagnosis and finding that my time with OB, serving, striving, and refusing to yield is equipping me well to confront the greatest challenge of my life so far. Well, David, it's wonderful to have you here in the conversation. Now, I'll just open up with a couple things. So first, as I first met David, and I'm guessing 1990, though I don't know if I have the year exactly right, but I was a new assistant instructor at the Voyager Outward Bound School. And David came up and ran a training for, back then we called it the Professional Development Programs, PDP, now it's called OBP within Outward Bound. And what really, what stood out for me during that training was he presented us with a bit of a question to ponder, and that was, if we were given the opportunity to work with a defense contractor and do Outward Bound work, should we do it? And at the time, I would say most of the culture of at least the Voyager Outbound School when I was there was pretty, I would say, on the edge of anti-corporate, certainly anti-big company, and definitely anti-military. My father was a military officer, and I grew up with a business degree, so I was a little bit of an anomaly when I came to Outward Bound. But I did find the conversation really intriguing, and I think one of the things that stood out with me, this was a long time ago, but what really stood out with me from the dialogue that David facilitated, which was, isn't that the best place that we should be, which is working within any place where we can make it more human and more empathetic and caring. So it did make an impact on me as an early assistant instructor, and led to eventually me doing a lot of corporate work through Outward Bound. So I'm grateful to you, David, for introducing me to that side of Outward Bound. And we cross paths every now and then over the years, but not too often. And I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. So for me, the way I'd like to open the dialogue is just to talk about your first exposure to the teachings of Kurt Hahn, and how you learned about that, and how did it initially impact the trajectory of your life?
Sure. Actually, before I do that, I want to respond to the story you just told about that staff training,
Sure.
which is mostly very accurate. I want to tweak it just a little bit as far as what my position was, and I guess continues to be, and that is, while I think we need to, as Outward Bound, as experiential educators, be ready to work with anyone. I raised the question of, it depends what the objective of the course is. If they truly want to explore what Outward Bound teaches and values, then by all means, let's go for it. However, and I'll give an example of an exception to that. And that was a case where I was doing Outward Bound professional work, and one of the major tobacco companies came to us and said, we'd like you to work with our marketing people, because they're feeling really beat up, and we want to get a motivational program. And some of it has to do with how much time is involved. If you're really in what we call a long course, you have much more opportunity to really delve into those kind of questions of values and purpose and direction. But they were really looking for like a 2-3 hour quick hit that would be a rah team building, morale boosting, so that those marketing executives could go out and sell more tobacco. And for me, that was a line that I didn't want to cross. That was a job that I wouldn't take. So while overall, you're accurate in the presentation that I made, the questions that I raised to grapple with these kinds of moral and ethical dilemmas. For me personally, there's a line that comes down to exactly what are they looking for? What are we able to provide? If it's 2-3 hours to fire up people to go out and sell cigarettes, I didn't want to have anything to do with that. If they want to take a 3-4 day course and explore the values and ethical questions, sure, that's what we should be there for. So with that clear, I'm ready to move on.
Perfect. So I know you sounded like right toward the end of your college experience, you ended up taking an Outward Bound course. So let's talk about that. And if that was your first exposure to Kurt Hahn, maybe
Yes.
a little bit about that.
Absolutely, it was, and it was. I was 22 years old. I was graduating from Cornell. I had no background in the Scouts, for instance. I was never a Scout. I'd never even camped out in my backyard. The whole outdoor experience was very exotic and pretty exciting, I will say. When I read about Outward Bound, I said, this sounds like something I'd really like to to test myself and go out and do. So I signed up for what was a 28-day classic Hurricane Island sailing course, late September, early October, last course of the season at Hurricane Island. And it blew me away. It changed my life and changed the trajectory of my life. In fact, I can point to a moment of epiphany, if I can use that phrase, where about halfway through the course, if anybody knows the Hurricane Island environment and the coursework, we got up every morning, pretty much before dawn, especially late in the season like that. And in the dawn darkness, we ran around the island a couple of times. We did about 5 or 6 miles. We concluded the run with a jump off the pier into the North Atlantic. And it was about a 10, 15-foot jump off the pier. And as you can imagine, the water was pretty brisk at that time of year in that location. And I remember like plunging in, scrambling over to the ladder and climbing up the ladder as fast as I could to get to my towel and wrapping the towel around me. And as I was doing so, I looked out, and across the bay, the sun was just coming up over Vinyl Haven Island. And as that sun came up, and as I stood there warming myself from that run and dip, there was a voice in my head. I mean, I could say literally a voice in my head that said, "This is what you're going to do with your life." And you know, I don't know where that voice came from, whether it was something from my psyche, or whether it was the voice of God outside me directing me to my pathway in life. But that moment transformed my life and the direction of my career. And so from there on, I pursued the outdoor activities, developed some skills, enough skills to be hired a few years later as an assistant instructor at North Carolina Outward Bound. And that began my career. And so I've kept that rich Kurt Hahn philosophy. Of course, I didn't know Kurt Hahn's name at the time that I signed up, but eventually I became exposed to the writings and the work and the philosophy of Kurt Hahn. And so that was the moment it all began, and the moment I started learning about Outward Bound's way of looking at the world and looking at personal development of the people who participate.
So when you started that 28-day program, that was pretty classic for Outward Bound, a month long for young people and mostly men. I know the Minnesota Outward Bound started with women before that, but mostly men.
My course was co-ed,
oh,
and my instructor team was co-ed. In fact, the woman named Judy Powers, if anybody's on here, it's Judy and Sam Powers. Judy was the instructor and Sam was the assistant instructor, which again was sort of a powerful message to me.
Yeah.
And as I got into North Carolina Outward Bound, I was the assistant instructor at first for some very strong and capable women, and that shaped my view of what women are capable of, and in fact what men are capable of in terms of deferring when necessary to women and their strength and expertise.
And you took you've taken a lot of different tacks within Outward Bound. So maybe share a little bit about your work with we were talking earlier about starting of the urban programs inside Outward Bound, how you got interested in that and how you saw the translation between the wilderness and the urban setting.
Sure. So, well, actually, you know, you just triggered a memory that I remember when I came back from Hurricane Island, having had this 28-day life-changing experience. We were dropped off in Boston, and I had a friend that I was staying overnight in Boston, and I went out on the streets in Boston that night, and I probably walked around the city till 2 or 3 a.m. And the contrast between the incredible isolation of the islands in the Penobscot Bay in Maine with the urban environment was just really stimulating, really exciting to me. And so I've always had sort of a fascination with the urban world. And after I'd spent a few seasons at North Carolina in the wilderness program, and I also during that time began the Cornell Outdoor Education Program, which was largely wilderness-based, outdoor-based. I moved to Minnesota, to St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota in 1984. So 12 years after my course. And I had Outward Bound experience and was hired by the Voyager Outward Bound School. At the time I had children at the time, so I wasn't interested in going up into the boundary waters and being a wilderness instructor again. But they were just at the beginning of starting what truly was the first urban Outward Bound program in America, in North America. And so they asked me to instruct and then direct the VIP program, we called it, in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the surrounding park system of Hennepin County, which is a terrific urban park systems, 4,000 or 5,000 acre parks, so that we could camp out in a sort of semi-wilderness environment. But also, I was really excited to find ways to connect classical Outward Bound activities with real gritty sorts of urban environments. So we did rooftop rappels. We did canoeing through the lock and dam system on the Mississippi River. And urban orienteering, some of which I learned from the New York City Outward Bound experience. So I did that kind of program for about 5 or 6 years, passed it along. I don't know if Peter Bailey's on the call. He was intending to be. Peter took over and he continued with the urban program, which eventually VOBS phased out, but I was really excited to see that VOBS picked it up again, and there's urban programming going once again in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I'm just delighted that I was sort of one of the pioneers to get that off the ground back in the 80s.
And I'm curious, beyond that epiphany that you had on your course, how has your ongoing relationship with Outward Bound, how has it shaped kind of life philosophy, your approach to everything from family to your profession? Just curious.
Sure. Yeah. Quickly on family. My daughter, when she was a teenager, she took a 15-day Voyager course. And my daughter at one point said, I think you should write a book called Parenting the Outward Bound Way. I think somebody's done that in the meantime. But there's no question that both of my kids were influenced by some of the adventures that I took them on, or I let them do on their own. That was also part of having them grow up, was to give them a lot of room to explore and find out what their path should be. But how the other parts of your question was, how's Outward Bound shaped my life, my philosophy? I think the first place I'd start is the people, and many of those people are right here on the screen today. And those people are just, I want to get beyond the cliche of saying they're important to me. They mean a lot to me. Right now in this stage of life, we only briefly touched on that, but given what I'm going through, in terms of my diagnosis and my treatment, dealing with questions of mortality, how much time I have left, the relationships that I have with Outward Bound people who are part of my Caring Bridge community, everybody here is welcome to look me up on caringbridge.com and join. I post every week my thoughts, a little bit about my medical condition, but it's mostly about my thoughts about life and purpose, mortality, and the support that I get from Outward Bound people, the comments, the phone calls, the texts. I could get a little choked up here because it's meant so much to me. It's and I'm looking at some of the faces here who are part of that world. Steve Pace and Scott McGovern and Steve Thomas and Doc. You guys mean a lot to me, and it's Outward Bound that's brought us together. And then there's the Outward Bound philosophy. I joked before about serve, strive, and yield only when you'd be a damn fool to keep going. For the most part, I'm not yielding. I'm pushing ahead and making the best of every day and doing what I can to stay alive and live a good life and keep giving back as long as I can. And so much of that comes from my Outward Bound experience, the courses that I led, and the people. It's all comes back to the people. And Han's words, your disability is your opportunity. That's something I'm pondering. How is this disability that I have an opportunity, an opportunity to help others, to share with others what I'm learning, what might help you if you're ever in a situation like I'm in now. What have I learned? What can I offer? So.
I know you've been really quite articulate in your writing, and I would say even responding with me in the past in some of the blog posting that I had done when I first started Honex. So I know that you're a wordsmith and you a communicator. So I would love just to explore a little bit with you the path that you've chosen since your diagnosis and in using CaringBridge as your blog post to communicate the journey and the experience. So what are you discovering as you step into that? And I know you have your way of framing your experience, so I'll let you take it from there. But love to just talk with you about what's the discovery that's happening for you.
Oh man, there's so many discoveries. It's hard to even start. Well, yeah. You talk first of all, just so that we get some groundwork, not rules really, but just a clarification of language and how I approach this. I made a choice really early on not to use the C word. And it's not because I'm in denial. I face it head on. I know what is happening with me. I know what my diagnosis is. I'm not pretending it's going away or in any way denying the reality of what my diagnosis is. But words have power and names have power. And I've chosen from the beginning not to use the C word, but to reframe what I'm dealing with, what has attacked me, as something that is. Many of you know the old Beatles movie Yellow Submarine, and if you remember from Yellow Submarine, what the attackers, the ones who invaded, were called. I don't know if anybody remembers what the invaders were called. I'm going to do a share screen right now. They were the Blue Meanies. If you remember, the Blue Meanies were the bad guys. The Blue Meanies were the ones that you were fighting, and so I don't know where it came from. It was just one of those moments of inspiration. But I said, I'm not going to call it the C word. I'm going to say, I've been invaded by the blue meanies, and I need to get rid of the blue meanies. And what it's done is it's kind of defanged the big bad disease. I mean, there's sort of a playful element to the blue meanies, and so it's helped me to have a little more fun, if you will, to have a little more fun with this struggle that I'm in, because I'm dueling with the blue meanies. And if you remember, the way that the Beatles got rid of the blue meanies is it was music. It was singing "All You Need Is Love," and then the blue meanies just ran away, and so that's the way I'm framing this battle that I'm in, is fighting the blue meanies. Go ahead, Mark. You got to.
Well, I was going to respond with the language choices that you are consciously taking, and I know that in a past podcast that you did, you talked a little bit about conscious choice of language, and one of those things I think that to me aligns a lot with the work that I've done since my field time in Outward Bound. And I think one of the things that struck me was, I think for participants in Outward Bound, as you were a participant, I was a student as well. That's a powerful experience. It's magical, and I think when you become an instructor, then you become a magician. You start to realize that there's a process that happens, and if that process is done well, the magic happens. And so it doesn't diminish the experience to me when you understand there's a process. In some ways, now it becomes that pathway of mastery as an instructor, right? You learn how to help guide that process. So I think for those of us who did that work, there's an influence in how we approach life and how we lead, how we guide things, that I think is unique and I think really needed in the world. So I'm curious for you in this. I heard you talking a little bit about language of being on an expedition versus a competition, of exploration versus a warrior energy. So I'd love for you to just chat a little bit about how you stand now in your life as you face this pretty significant challenge.
Yeah. Early on, I was struck by the language of this world, this medical world that I've entered into, because it's very much militaristic. It's very much, we're at war, and you read obituaries, is lost his long battle. And there was something that struck me discordant about that. And so I thought about it. It was very easy for me, again, based upon my life in Outward Bound and experiential adventure education. It naturally came to me right away that hey, you know what? I'm going on an adventure, and adventures have hardships. Adventures sometimes have pain and discomfort, but adventures also have moments of joy and beauty. And I've already talked a little bit about the joy and beauty that I've experienced with the relationships and the people and the messages that I receive. And so I kind of took it on from the beginning as an adventure that I could. And the other thing about adventures is you learn from adventures. I mean, if you're smart, you do. You learn about yourself. You learn about your faith, what sustains you. You learn about other people. Boy, I've learned a lot about other people. I mean, there are some people who have good intentions and say, hey, best to you. I'm with you on this. And then there are other people who are like really there for you. There are people who are like every week checking in, who are like doing things for you. So you learn about people, you learn about yourself, and that's all part of an adventure. I will say, and I was challenged by a friend who said maybe you can incorporate a warrior into the adventure. Maybe and that really resonated for me. You know, I think about like the Lord of the Rings and the great adventure that Frodo and Sam went on. And sure, it was an adventure, but you know, there were also some battles. There was some warfare in there, and so my view has evolved some, and so now it's a yin and a yang thing. It's an adventure, but it involves some warfare against the Blue Meanies. And my treatments are really a warfare, and what I need to do to make my treatments more effective, whether that's diet or exercise or prayer or positive mental attitude. Those are all components of the warfare side of this adventure. So that's some of it. There's another thought or two that I had with your question. Oh, I know. Another thing that I want to say about how I'm dealing with it, that again, I give this as thoughts for people to consider. And I want to say to every person on this call, everyone I'm looking at, I hope it never happens. I hope that you all die peacefully in your sleep at age 99, with no pain and no suffering that goes before it. But the grim reality is, most of us are going to face a really tough test like this. And if we don't, a loved one will, and we'll be there to support a loved one. So when I talk about the lessons that I've learned, at its core is, I hope something that I say will touch you, will reach you, and will be something that you can remember someday, something you can draw upon and say, I remember when that Dave Moriah was going through his challenge and he said this, he offered this. So that's why I take the time to write my blog, to go on a podcast like this. And one thing I want to say about sharing your story, being open about your diagnosis and what you're going through. Everyone has the right to deal with it in their own way. And some people choose to be very private about it and only tell their immediate loved ones until the very end. And I respect that. I respect it. I happen to be an extrovert. And I happen to be a writer. So it's easy for me to share my story openly. But what I want to say is that those people who choose to keep it a secret, first of all, it takes an enormous amount of energy to hold a secret in. And is that healthy for you to keep that secret in? Now, maybe it is. Maybe you need to do it. I'm not going to judge it. But what I've learned is by being open and being vulnerable, I gain so much. I am fed so much by the people I'm sharing my story with. And I would just urge anybody in a situation like this to consider what you can gain from letting go of the secret and sharing with others what it is that you're going through. And if your situation is anything like mine, people will rise to the occasion. People will reach out and care for you. And that is worth gold.
You're talking a lot about a lifetime of relationships built. And I think, again, one of the maybe unspoken powerful things of working for Outward Bound is that relationship of the people that you live and work with. So I wonder if you can speak a little bit to some of the that fabric in your life and some of the people that you've had a chance to be around and work in your long connection to Outward Bound.
Sure. Yeah, and I want to throw in Cornell Outdoor Education as well. I've had a lifelong relationship, not lifelong, of course, but a 50-year relationship with Cornell Outdoor Education. Last summer was the 50th anniversary of COE, and we had just a marvelous reunion of staff over the 50 years. Almost 200 people came back to Cornell and Ithaca, and looking out at the faces, people that I knew and taught courses with in the 1970s, people that I've known more recently. Mark Holton's on this call, and he's been somebody I've known for 25 years, the director these days at COE, and he could talk about the relationships that he's had. And it's interesting because the relationships, whether it's at Cornell or at Outward Bound, the relationships are often very short-lived. Maybe a summer, maybe a year or two at the university. And yet there is a depth to those relationships. When you are when you are in the field and the rain's coming down and you're lost trying to find your way through the rhododendrons and on the hillside in North Carolina, and your crew is looking at you like you're God, and you're gonna get them out of this miserable situation, and you have no idea which way to go. and you and your partner are looking at each other, trying to figure out where to go and what do you say to your group. And that goes deep. That goes really deep. And so even if you just spend sometimes 22 days with that person, and then they're just sort of fleeting acquaintances from there on, and maybe you don't see them for 25 years, and then something like this happens to me, and suddenly a Scott McGovern is on my blog, and he's showing me love and support, and that stuff's deep. That's deep. So that's what I mean about the relationships that you get in this field. Yeah.
I'm curious how do you think we can carry that forward in the world? Because I agree with you. It really truly is a blessing for those who've got to do this work. But how do you think we can carry that forward?
Yeah. And before I go any further, I want to say a word of deep appreciation for John Huey, who has joined us and is a very special friend and mentor to me. And our relationship goes back to Table Rock in the 1970s. And it's great to see you, John. I appreciate you showing up tonight. How do we carry it out in the world? I think, I'm torn between saying it has to be intentional and saying it's just natural. It's just natural. When you have those kind of relationships, spreading it and creating and nurturing new relationships just comes from the life that you've led and the people that you've known. But I think it's one-on-one. I think it's making time happen and not letting the busyness of life get in the way. I think that the real the danger, the sin perhaps of our times is busyness. And through busyness, we lose the connections that are so important, especially at a time like this, what I'm going through. You got to shed the busyness.
And I would encourage any of you who want to stay connected to use the Honex platform. That's the reason it exists. It's not we didn't launch Honex to turn it into a big for-profit organization. We're not trying to pull you into membership for any other reason except that really to continue those relationships and feel like I do think that there's magic that happens through those experiences, and if we can continue to kindle it, and I know, David, I think you've done an amazing job of doing that in your life, and continuing to do it back with your work at Cornell Outdoor Education Center. I know that you're on their advisory board and have reinvigorated that relationship. So I think it's important, to me, these relationships that were created, that we can continue to stay connected to each other and support each other, and then to support that next generation too, because I think there's a lot of one of the things that I know that you talked about in the other podcast that you were a guest on was talking about uncertainty in life and how that uncertainty, I don't remember the exact quote, but how that uncertainty sort of changes the trajectory of things. And I think that with the rapid change of the world that we're going through, that everything is uncertain. And so it really depends upon people like the people sitting on this call who have developed the skills to lead in uncertainty. And I think for me, that's one of the powerful things I learned as an Outward Bound instructor, which was, I had no idea what was going to happen. And to your point about being lost in the rhododendrons, that became part of being an instructor, right? Was that's going to happen. So it's not that you avoid getting lost, but what do you do when you are lost?
Right. Yeah. A word about uncertainty. This stage of life is I've reached uncertainty on steroids. Making plans. My wife and I joke about it all the time. We say, okay, let's make a plan. We're going to go here. We're going to go on vacation. We're going to go on this trip. But hold it lightly. Hold it lightly, because things get upended with my treatment gets upended, and all of a sudden now we're living in Manhattan as I go through this clinical trial, and that wasn't in the cards. I mean, that came up with like 3 days before we upended our life and moved to Manhattan. When this clinical trial became available. And that's just the way that I'm living. And, I thought about a connection to Outward Bound in that regard. And this is about the student experience, not the instructor experience, but those of us who've been instructors, we know that one of the techniques, I don't know if they're still doing it, but one of the techniques that I grew up with as an instructor, and I experienced it as a student, was the instructors took our watches away, and the instructors didn't tell us from day to day what was coming next, so that we got up in the morning or the night before, they'd say, get your climbing outfit ready, or get your white water, your paddle gear ready for tomorrow morning. And we didn't know until 10 o'clock at night, the night before, that tomorrow was the day that we were going paddling, or tomorrow's the day that we're going whitewater. And that's very much the way that I'm living my life right now, is the uncertainty of what's coming tomorrow. And then, of course, there's the big looming question. The uncertainty, is this clinical trial, which has great promise and there's great hope in the trial that I'm going through, that it will, the words were used, it will lead to a long-term remission. It might lead to a long-term remission, or it might not. and I'm living with the uncertainty of that. I am in a stage 4 diagnosis, and I think everybody knows what that means. It's not like a nice, simple, oh, we cut it out and we'll keep monitoring you. Everything's, looking good. This is like the blue meanies are in there, and we don't know how easily, how quickly, how possible it is to get rid of them. So talk about living with uncertainty on a day-to-day basis. That's how I'm living. And I get up every day and say, thank you, Lord. Thank you, God. I have another day on this planet. I have another day to make a difference. And that's okay. That's enough. That's enough. Hey, Mark, can we get to questions?
Yeah, that was perfect. I was just about to say, I think you've touched so well on relationships, and there are a lot of people that you are connected to on the call. So let's open it up to let people questions and comments for David. Go ahead and unmute yourself, and can have some dialogue.
Please.
I'll go first.
Go ahead, Mr. Huey.
While I have the opportunity to say this to you, Dave, I want to thank you for the level of sharing, the deep feeling, the honesty, the integrity with which you're sharing. I'm a little bit older than you, and I think about these things more than somebody who's younger than I, and it means a lot to me. And I share almost everything you send with several other people who are dealing with similar challenges, and I'm grateful to you, not just because you do it, but because you do it and because it's so authentic, real, and meaningful. So I want to, my hat's off to you. It's a great way to use the energy and time you have, and I'm one of those who feel blessed by your desire and your willingness to do it so well. Thank you.
Thank you, John. You mean a lot to me, brother.
Larissa?
Yeah, I have a question. Hi, I'm here with my friend Arnie Shore. I think some
Oh,
of
yeah,
you
Arnie.
know
Arnie Shore, my goodness.
Yeah.
Hi, Arnie. It's good to see you.
Yeah,
Good to see
yeah.
all of you.
Hi. Hi, David. It's nice to see you. I love seeing you on Caring Bridge. And I love how much you share about what you're going through. I love the blue meanies. And I love the whole thing about not being at war. I get that every now and then you have to go there. And I appreciate that as well. I'm wondering if you could talk for a moment. I know that your experience is not Deborah's experience or Kira's or Shane's, but if you could just talk for a little bit about those 3 people and how they're doing.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. I would really I'd be remiss. It'd be so wrong if come here, Deborah. Come here. I want you to see the love of my life and the person who is
I think about her so much. Hi, Deborah. It's so nice to see you.
yeah.
I've been listening off screen, so I've
Okay,
been.
all right. Oh, I figured you were pretty much always there.
Yeah. I haven't done it yet, but I need to write one of my blogs about caregivers in general and Deborah in particular. And I tell you, I could get choked up here, so hang on.
I get choked up asking you. It's okay.
Yeah. When I think of what Deborah has done for me and what she's meant to me in this year plus, I think about people who don't have somebody like this.
Yeah.
I think about, oh man, I think about like a single mother who gets a diagnosis like this, who doesn't have a partner, who doesn't have, and not to mention that the resources. I mean, I haven't said anything about this, but this is a shout out for Medicare and socialized medicine. I hope everybody on this call takes responsibility for advocating for universal health care and a healthcare system that will take care of people in a situation like this without their having to worry about money. I have been so blessed by the combination of having some resources and, you know, all you guys know all the money that I made at Outward Bound and Cornell. You know, I have a huge nest egg that I can draw upon. But Medicare is amazing. It is socialized medicine at its best. All right, that's enough about that because I want to get back to Deborah and my children. You know, my kids are great. I don't know how I actually don't know how it's affecting them. But they're there for me and Deborah's primarily, but also my friends and the community that surrounds me. It's amazing. Does that answer, Larissa?
It does. Thank you. Thanks. Just, yeah. Yeah. I know that, but I also just want to know that, want that all of them to know that, you know, every time I read what you write, my heart goes out to all of them. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Anybody else?
I'm just so moved by what you said near the end of your sharing before questions. Just waking up every day and having another opportunity to make a difference is enough. That's, yeah, I'm going to keep that one.
Yeah. You know, the whole sense of purpose, I mean, I've given a lot of thought to my purpose in this stage of life because it's different. It's so different. I mean, before it was like, I'm going to take people out in the woods and I'm going to give them self-confidence, you know, help people get along better with each other and all of that. Well, I ain't doing that anymore, you know, but
No.
Line a call there, and there we go. So yeah, I'm not. Sorry, they're family members calling. So yeah, I'm not teaching and leading in the same way that I gained purpose throughout my career. You know, that just gave me excitement and energy to be that teacher. And now I'm not doing that anymore. But some of you know Deb Lader, who was a Cornell outdoor ed person. She said to me on one of these podcasts, she said, "You're teaching us all how to go through this stage of life." And that really hit me hard, that the responsibility that I've been given to share, like I said before, you know, many of you are going to go through something like this, or a loved one will. So I have this gift right now. Somebody else once said to me, everybody was at the beginning, somebody said, "Oh, I feel so sad for you." And I'd hear that a lot, you know, I'm so sorry, I feel sad. And then this dear friend of mine said, "I'm so glad you have this time." And that one really hit me like, wow, I have the gift of time. I didn't just like get struck by lightning or, you know, wake up dead after a heart attack. I have the gift of time. I've had now over a year to be able to think, to reflect, to share, and maybe to teach, maybe to lead. So thank you, Pat, for that question and point.
Hey, Dave, this is Doc. We got a chance to reconnect about 10 years ago when I applied for the Cornell position. And I remember you asking me, I've always thought of you as somebody who asks great questions and real questions, not just questions that, you know, we know the answer to, but, you know, And you asked, well, why did I want to do this job? And, I really said, to be in community. I mean, I really miss the opportunity to be in community, especially with young people because a lot of my mentors were actually aging and stepping out of my life. And so to think of young people as being my mentors would be an interesting concept. But I didn't get the job. And immediately when I heard the news, my mom was attacked by the blue meanies.
Oh.
She eventually passed away, but I realized that it enabled me to reconnect in community. I spent a year with my mom without having to work much, but to be in community and really support her and our family around that. And I never forget the day before she died, she said, you really like to climb mountains. I said, well, yes, I do. And she goes, well, pick a mountain and I'll meet you there after I'm gone.
Yeah.
Wow. And 3 years later, I was on the summit of the mountain, and I kept expecting to see my mom's ghost giving me grief. But that night, a full moon was rising, and a herd of elk came into my campsite, and a female elk broke away and came up to me. And your question continues to resonate with me today is, what does it really mean to be in community? And my friend Peter Block, I think, said it really well, is to make our gifts visible and useful.
Sure.
And, I believe that you are making your gifts visible and useful without necessarily having to have a title or a vocation per se to do that. And I appreciate that you're able to do that both through your words, but just through your presence and how you're showing up too. So just wanted to let you know that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Titles get in the way, don't they?
Yeah.
Titles can box us in. So,
yeah. At this stage, they don't mean much to me anymore.
I know we had a couple people that just hopped in. Hi, Peter. Good to see you. But
Bailey.
Right now we are in conversation with David. So people are asking questions or making comments. So anyone else want to have any thoughts they'd like to share?
Hello? I do. Whoops. Go ahead.
Hi, David.
Yes. Is this Dory?
No, this is Dory.
Okay. I'm just looking through.
Who is it? Karen.
Okay.
Hey, David. So I first met you when I was 18. I went on Outward Bound through Cornell. And we have stayed in touch. I remember riding on the, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, but tell me what your last name is, because I don't see your picture.
You can't see me? Oh, this is Karen Pittman.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, great. Oh, yeah.
All right, Karen.
I can see you. Now I can see you, Karen. Okay.
All right.
And of course we know you. We stayed in touch for 50 years.
Right, for a long time. I remember riding on the back of your motorcycle. I remember climbing the WVBR radio tower and getting chased by the cops.
Yes.
Yeah. And great influence when I was a freshman at Cornell. But we
ended up in the police station, as I recall.
Yeah.
All in separate rooms as the police checked our stories to make sure that they coincided.
Yeah. But the great thing is that we have remained in touch for many, many years. We've gotten together at Long Beach Island, New Jersey, and in different places, and have stayed friends and stayed in touch. And that's just the kind of guy you are, David. You keep those relationships, you stay in touch with people. And now you're going through a tough time, but here you are still staying in touch. I don't see you climbing any radio towers or anything, but you're still there, and it's really great. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate staying in touch with you as well.
Other folks have questions or comments? Go ahead and unmute yourself. I've been muting people back up just so we keep the noise down. So you'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay, so this is Dory Albert.
Hi, Dory.
I just had to you had so much influence on my life. I didn't meet you until I was 60, and I was by far the oldest person in the group. This was at Cornell, and then I took the one course, and then I did as many as I could with David. I know I came out of there. I first did a climbing course. I came back to Orchard Park, which is outside of Buffalo, and I had to do something at the office, which is a brick building about 3 stories high. And I remember getting out there the night that I got back, and I was doing something with a friend, and I looked at that office building. I said, you know, I could, if I had my climbing shoes on, I could just go right up the side of that building. And she looked at me, and that's the kind of feeling that you gave me from the first time that I met you, just on through. I know some of my grandchildren took courses with you, and we went to Cooperstown, or the cross country. And a couple of them have done Outward Bound afterwards. Now they're almost 40, those guys. Yeah. I brought 4 little kids that were going to go skiing after we did the weekend. But anyway, I came away from Cornell that summer, just feeling I could do anything. I could just conquer the world and just keep going. You know, jumping off the back of the stadium at Cornell was no big deal. And we climbed through gorges where you weren't supposed to be on. Remember? Came down through, and there was a 30-foot drop. Well, what are you going to do? Well, you just tie yourself in and go down. And there was no question of, I can't do this.
Yeah.
There might have been before I took your first course, but I approached my whole life differently from that time on, and it's just amazing to me.
Wow.
So, and here I am, 88, and still going.
Thank you, Dory. But Dory kept coming back every summer. She was my original groupie, and I used to joke about how every summer she'd come back, she was younger than the last time. I couldn't believe it. So it's just great to hear from you, and it means a lot to me that I had that influence on you. Thank you, Dory. Climb on.
Dave, this is Scott McGovern. We have so much to catch up on. I just right now want to say one thing and have one question. I'd like to say, just to echo in the same way many people have said, that I so appreciate how you're moving through this and the gift you are giving all of us in allowing us to witness how you're moving through this, because I think you're absolutely right that many of us will be going through our own challenges as we continue our own journeys. So I'm very appreciative, very grateful, and very grateful to reconnect with you.
Thank you.
One question that I'd like to ask is, we've talked earlier about Outward Bound, and we know that Outward Bound is a process, and Outward Bound can happen in the woods, it can happen in cities, it can happen in a broom closet. But I'd like to go back to the woods and ask you, in what ways have you found the natural world to be part of your healing journey?
First of all, say hi to Peggy for me, please.
Yes.
Peggy was my partner one summer on one of those. What are we doing? We're in the middle of the rhododendrons, and we don't know how to get out of here. It's ironic that you're asking that question when I've just spent the last 3 weeks on the Upper East Side in Manhattan.
I'm aware of that.
It's very ironic. But we're closing out this chapter here in Manhattan, and I'm moving back to Ithaca in a couple of weeks. And there is a part of me that is just craving Ithaca and the woods and trails and gorges around Ithaca. from the beginning, I was living in Ithaca and would make sure that on an almost daily basis, as long as my energy was up, I would go out basically for a trail walk. As I say, my condition doesn't allow me to do any hardcore, extreme outdoor adventuring, but just they talk about, the streams release ions that are healing and healthy. And, I think that's probably true. I mean, I know that if nothing, well, I was going to say if nothing physical, at least psychological, but there is a connection that, just sitting by some of those waterfalls and streams on the trails in Ithaca, just peace just washes over me. And peace in your soul and your spirit has to be good for your body. It has to chase the blue meanies, just like all you need is love chases them, just like, because it's music, the streams and waterfalls are musical. And that's what chases the blue meanies away. That's what gives me peace. The Christian Bible talks about the peace that passes all understanding. And I've experienced that in this year. And some of it has to do with my faith. And some of it has to do with the nurturing, healing presence of nature. So thank you for the question. And I'm really looking forward to getting back to Ithaca. And Mark Holton, let's go for a hike, buddy.
David, you and I haven't seen each other for a long time. And I always remembered you and recall right now that you're great fun. You had us laughing and going in circles all the time. And then we would go to Red Sox games.
Yes.
I've been to a number of baseball games, but never with the likes of you. It was an experience beyond anything I could ever imagine. And,
so I promised early in this call that I wouldn't go down the rabbit hole of baseball.
I know, but you don't have to. I'll go down it for you. The fact is that you were always straight up about everything. If we were talking about Outward Bound, you gave your point of view. You didn't you didn't haw. You didn't say what would be politic to say. You're talking to a director. Didn't matter to you. You were talking about Outward Bound. So it seems to me that part of you is so much alive. You still see the bright side. You still see things are funny. They're serious and funny at the same time. And I recall those days with you I didn't want anyone bowing in my direction. I wanted someone to talk to. You were the person to talk to.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. John Huey said something similar and that's when I was just a wee assistant instructor at North Carolina. And he said, everybody treated me like I was the boss. I was the director. And you treated me like I was a guy. I was John Huey. I was a guy. So that I took as a real compliment.
We're going to soon, so I just want to be sure that we'll be in touch, but Larissa will always stay in touch.
She's great. She's great. Great to see you, Arnie. Appreciate it. So I'm here as long as you guys want, and as soon as we're done, I'm probably going to take a nap.
Let me do the formal wrap up, and then if anyone wants to hang out, I'll keep the channel open. But thank you, David, for being here today. Really grateful for your sharing your story and for the positivity that you bring to the world and the positive difference that you certainly made in my life as a young instructor with Outward Bound. I'm really grateful for that and grateful to continue the dialogue as we move forward. And I also want to thank all of you for being here as well and sharing this conversation. We will get this up edited down at some point. The slowdown is completely on me. to get through editing and get a formal podcast launched. But we will certainly have this out. So if you want to go back and hear it in the future, or if there's anyone that would like to hear it, and I'll let you all know when it's up. And I hope that you'll continue to connect through HonX, and if you are an Outward Bound, former Outward Bound person, or connected to Kurt Hahn in any way, and you or someone has a really good story you'd love to share, we would love to have you at a future fireside chat like this. So thanks again for being here. And again, we will stay on.
Yeah, could I just like to say a word to Dave?
Hey, Sarah, I just saw you come on. It's great to see you.